A very good day to you all. Many thanks for joining us on the show This Week in Parliament. My name is Joseph Opoku Gakpo. We're coming to you from Parliament House in Osu here in Accra. And on this show, This Week in Parliament, we do a review of the major issues that dominated discussions here in Parliament in the course of the week. We bring you details on the loans that were approved. We bring you details on the debates on the key national issues that dominated conversation in the course of the week. We also bring you details of some of the bills that the House ended up passing, as well as the backstories and the issues that even they didn't make it onto the very regular bulletins that you really need to know about. Well, this week in Parliament, the major issue has been the debate on the mid-year budget review statement and the supplementary budgetary request that the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori Atta, was in Parliament last week to deliver and to request for. In the course of this week, the House debated this particular request that the Finance Minister had put before them. They debated this on Monday, they debated this on Tuesday. They concluded the debate on Wednesday with addresses from both the majority and the minority leaders. We'll bring you all the details on that in a while. But let's begin from Monday, because it was a very heated day as far as the debate on the budget statement is actually concerned. Isaac Adongo, the NDC MP, Kojo Ponkroma, the NPP MP, and also the Minister for Information, and all the very controversial people, as you would call them, who, when they get into the debate sessions in the House, they throw out all the jabs and give out all the sound bites. They join in the conversation as far as the debate on the budget estimates are concerned. And Isaac Adongo in particular, in virtually all the points he raised as he debated this particular budget statement, ended up drawing the wrath of the majority side, and the Speaker had to repeatedly call him to order even as the debate went on right here in Parliament House.
Mr. Speaker, if I add this disbursement of 1.27 billion to the Eurobond payment of 1.87 billion, Mr. Speaker, I get a deficit finance from foreign sources to the tune of 2.9 billion United States dollars. Mr. Speaker, use their own exchange rate that they used to convert at 5.54 Ghana cedis to the dollar. And Mr. Speaker, you get a figure of 16.67 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, in that same report, we are told. Order.
Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that I have to do this to my colleague. Unfortunate. Mr. Speaker, he needs to understand.
Honorable Dr. Kutu, one moment. When figures are presented as factual, whether from my right or from my left, and another honorable member rises immediately and I'm watching critically, I must give that person that opportunity at the right and prime time, whether to accept or contradict. And I will do that, and when I say, I'll give you more time. Honorable Adongo started at 12:30. He should have finished at 12:45. I am increasing the time, and I will use my discretion to give him every reasonable time. But what should be challenged will be challenged.
So, Speaker, let us understand the basic economic principles. Then we'll go along. Don't just use 1.27 or spend times 5.5. That is not how we do it. So, Speaker, with respect, you should avert this point to the sovereign bond financing of 13.6 in 2019. That is what is here.
Mr. Speaker, let me show you how the minister managed to get the numbers he's getting. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report that he gave about the Eurobond finance, he reports 13.6 billion. He then takes away all the money in the name of amortization of about 10 billion. The end effect of this is that the minister is only reflecting about 2.4 billion of the Eurobond money in seats on the deficit. When you have spent 1.8 billion, any other accounting treatment here that does not give the true picture of 1.8 billion is fraudulent and it is not acceptable. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to accept these type of numbers that do not reflect the true picture of our finances, and that is what I'm trying to do. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, on the public debt once again,
Just a moment, Honorable Amwa.
You have no basis. The honorable member has no basis to say that the minister has produced fraudulent figures. He said fraudulent figures. He has to recheck that word he used. He has no basis to say that. He has no proof to say that some figures are fraudulent.
The word fraudulent includes bad motive.
Not fraudulent, but to say that any other treatment of the numbers that does not reflect that you have spent $1.8 billion of Eurobond money to finance the deficit is unacceptable. And that is what we are dealing with today. And Mr. Speaker, if you put all together our deficit, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate my colleagues do not want to hear the truth. We've done everything to make sure.
25 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, 25 minutes with about 15 minutes going to them.
The essence of his contribution is that he has a more accurate computation of public debt and deficit numbers, and that the numbers as presented by the Honourable Minister responsible for finance are inaccurate. Mr. Speaker, this is not the first time our colleagues on the other side, and indeed Honourable Adongo, have repeated this argument or sought to use it to undermine the work that is going on here in Ghana. Indeed, the last time, the argument was that the Honourable Minister responsible for finance, and this was when he presented the substantive budget, had cooked the figures. The Hansard will bear me out. They proceeded to announce to the Ghanaian public that he had presented a different set of figures to Parliament and another set of figures to the International Monetary Fund. It took the International Monetary Fund live on national television to call them to order. It took the IMF country director on multimedia's program Newsfile on Joy News to draw their attention to the fact.
Order. Honorable Adongo.
Mr. Speaker, within the public debt management report, you insisted that I should not make reference to that IMF document because it was not before us. As a result of it, I could not table it. But if Honorable Opoku Gakpo wants us to debate that document, I am ready to debate it right now. Because, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be barred from speaking to an issue which my honorable colleague is actually lying about it, because nowhere did IMF say that government was right. If you can prove, if you can bring any document from IMF that vindicates government, we will accept it. Any other thing is rumor.
Honorable Opoku Gakpo, be advised.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for admonishing us to use decorous language. And I want to encourage my colleague that this is a respectable, hallowed chamber, and that we should use decorous language. I have not called him a liar. I am saying that the last time they questioned Ghana's figures, it took the country director of the International Monetary Fund to appear on national television to call them out that the sort of computations they were doing were incorrect. Yet they persist in doing this computation with the objective of confusing the Ghanaian public. Every time they do this.
This is Parliament. Anything said in this house is privilege. To say that the IMF called this house to order is to belittle this house. Mr. Speaker, the assertion. Mr. Speaker, the assertion.
One moment, please.
The assertion that.
One moment, please, because this is going perhaps contrary to what I also heard. Honorable Nkrumah.
Mr. Speaker.
You say.
Mr. Speaker, I encourage my colleagues to calm down and listen carefully. I have never said the IMF has called Parliament to order. I haven't said that. I have said that our colleagues on the other side have consistently made an argument, and the last time they made that argument, it took the IMF country director to call it out on national television that the computation they were doing was wrong. I have not said that the Parliament of Ghana has been called to order.
On Tuesday, well, the debate on the Mid-year budget review estimate request actually continued. I'll tell you more about that in a while. But in the morning on Tuesday, the Minister for Interior, Ambrose Derry, was in Parliament to respond to questions on issues having to do with the police training school that's located in Polugu. The indication is that there had been about 85 COVID-19 cases that had been recorded there, and MPs quizzed him on what exactly is being done to ensure that even as various training initiatives go on for those in the security agencies, even in the light of COVID-19, there were questions on what is being done to ensure that the recruits are protected from the virus as much as possible. And he indicated that all those who had actually tested positive at that particular police training school had recovered, and he listed out about 8 specific actions that the Ghana Police Service and the Ministry of Interior are actually taking to ensure that there are no further COVID-19 cases as far as the various training schools are concerned.
Also, the PPEs, which basically are face masks and all the other, other protocols, including medical packets and so on, are strictly enforced. That is why I talked about the risk communication teams that exist, and they make sure that they wear those anytime that they are, whether they are in their rooms or in the classes, they do wear them. So it's a strict, very strict adherence.
Now to the biggest issue that unfolded on Tuesday. Per the provisions as far as the rules governing the work of Parliament is concerned, when issues are brought to the House for discussion, including the mid-year budget review statement and all, apart from members of Parliament who have the right to actually participate in debate on the floor and all, if you happen to be a minister of state or a deputy minister and you are not even a member of Parliament, you can join MPs and debate the issues and respond to questions and actually analyze the issues here in Parliament. Well, one of those individuals who, although is not a member of Parliament, usually comes to the House either to respond to questions or join in debates or help with processes to approve various loans is the Deputy Minister for Finance, one of them, Charles Boanhene. There are about 3 of them. 2 of them are MPs. Charles Boanhene is not an MP, but Mr. Boanhene usually comes to the House to join in discussions on issues. As expected, and usually as he would do, he came to the House to join in the debate having to do with the mid-year budget review statement as well. And in the debate, he made a number of disclosures.
We have also paid over 96% of the depositors in the savings and loans, microfinance and banking sector. Mr. Speaker, 96% of depositors have been paid in full. So it's the remaining 4% who make the most noise that are still outstanding and are yet to be paid. Mr. Speaker, in paying these depositors, we used a combination of bonds and cash. We paid them 20% in cash and 80% in bonds.
So on Wednesday, the debate on the mid-year budget review statement that began on Monday actually concluded on Wednesday with very interesting addresses from both the majority leader, Osaiche Mensah-Bonsu, and the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu. Let's get into bits of the details. Among others, Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader, made a very forceful claim that the Minister for Finance actually should be sanctioned in a way that he will be removed from office as Minister of Finance. Now, why has this become an issue? Last year, Parliament passed what is called the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2019, which says that when it comes to the expenditures that the Finance Minister makes at the end of every year, and monies that are actually taken beyond the revenue that he can generate, what is described as the deficit. The deficit is something that shouldn't be more than 5% of the nation's gross domestic product. Now, we're getting the indication that as a result of COVID-19 related expenditures and all, we are seeing a situation where the country's budget deficit is hitting below, somewhere around 7.4% and even still rising. And on the basis of that, Haruna Idrisu indicated that they on the minority side will invoke the Fiscal Responsibility Act and push for the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori, to actually be censured. And when you talk of censorship, this is something that's captured in the Constitution of Ghana and also in the Standing Orders of Parliament that Parliament would have to vote, and if there is more than 2/3 of them approving the censorship, then the president will be forced to either fire the finance minister or cause him to resign, or the minister will end up resigning by himself. And so the indication was given by the minority leader Haruna Ijesu that they on the minority side will really push for this going forward.
Let me refer you to paragraph 438. Unthinkable and unimaginable. Instead of doing what is needful under the Public Financial Management Act, the minister is coming for what he calls, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, from development thus far, it is clear that the fiscal rules of a deficit not exceeding 5% of GDP and a positive primary balance enshrined in the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018 Act 982 are neither feasible nor attainable. When? Is it only for 2020 or is it only for 2020 or 2019, 2018, 2017? Were we within the regime of fiscal deficit? What he himself said in the law was that if he exceeds the fiscal deficit of 5%, he will go home, and that he should be sanctioned. So to evade the sanctions, he has come that Parliament should suspend the law. We will not suspend the law. He will undergo the sanctions spelled out in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. He defined it for himself.
Well, the finance minister, Ofori Atta, had a response to the minority leader.
The 11.8 billion was well articulated as to how that would be used. But really, it's to ensure that we have stability these 6 months going, and then segue it into the Obatampa Ghana Cares Program. So thank you very much indeed.
The breach of the financial act has been avoided in any way. Because
I beg your pardon?
The breach of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, have been avoided in any way.
I mean, if you read the act, it says what? Catastrophe, force majeure. Are you suggesting I could have prevented the pandemic? I'm just asking.
They think you could have cut other expenditures.
I could have avoided I could have avoided oil prices. And then what would you when you look at the care and the CAP program, what did we spend the money on? The lockdown period, the average Ghanaian not being able to access food, lifeline, electricity. I mean, the issue of governance is to make sure that you keep your people alive. It's very easy to say cut it out until you see people on the street. This is a government that cares and will not compromise the lives of our people in any way. Thank you.
When you hear thank you, guys. Cheers.
All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. No. The ayes have it. The House has accordingly approved a sum of 11,896,476,566 Ghana cedis as supplementary estimates of government for the 2020 financial year.
Thursday was a very exciting day right here in Parliament, and as usual, the very exciting things happened on the corridors of the House and not exactly in the chamber. I'll tell you about a meeting of the Finance Committee that unfolded in a while, and also a number of other developments. But first, on Thursday morning, there was a briefing by the minority spokesperson on roads and transport, Kwame Agboja, who raised concerns about a law that Parliament had passed earlier this year, particularly in March, banning the importation of salvage or accident vehicles, and additionally putting a ban on the importation of vehicles that are more than 10 years old as part of plans to encourage various automobile companies to actually set up plants right here in Ghana. This is something that the Akufo-Addo administration has been pushing for quite a while. And after that law was passed in March this year, its implementation was suspended until November this year. And so the plans have begun to get that implemented. And we've heard from some of the spare part dealers and all kick against this particular plan. Well, the minority joined the conversation on that, and Kwame Agboja has been insisting that implementing this particular law will end up disadvantaging a lot of Ghanaians who gain their employment through issues having to do with the handling of various second-hand vehicles.
Anybody who is part of the Ghana Automotive Development under that program, you shall grant them the right to import fully built vehicles. And we are saying that so far we have been shown pictures of VW Polo being assembled. That is why I asked you, how many VW Polo did you find on the way when you were coming here? So it is not a situation where we are against the production of vehicles. We are saying that the way you've crafted the law, by even giving all taxes in tax exemptions to the manufacturers as against the local importers, you have already skewed the market to the extent that if you even sell VW Polo for 60,000, how many nurses, how many teachers? And we are saying, do you think Ghanaians can afford new cars and have chosen to buy used cars? No, it's because of the purchasing power of the people.
On the other side, as usual, scaremongering, poisoning the debate, seeking to turn a section of the economy against the government, and bastardizing a very well-intentioned policy that we all agree will provide long-term benefits for us. What they want to do is to what? Create, loot, and share today without thinking about the impact of their policies on sustainable jobs and livelihoods and the development of our economy over the long term. Unfortunately for them, the Akufo-Addo administration builds to last.
Still on Thursday, well, there was a meeting of Parliament Finance Committee, and the meeting had to do with a request that had come from the Minister for Finance, Ofori, that the law that we spoke about earlier, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, be suspended so that the government can spend well beyond what is the expected level and all. Well, the meeting actually dragged on for quite a while, for almost 2 hours from the indication that we get. The Finance Minister himself was in that particular meeting of the Finance Committee, and the committee's meeting was to come to an agreement or otherwise on whether they should actually back his request for a suspension of an act that Parliament had passed sometime last year. Although we all know that the act itself makes provisions for Parliament to actually suspend once the House thinks that the Finance Minister has provided the necessary justification for that. The Finance Minister sat through that meeting for well about an hour, and then we gather that he had to step out and allow for his deputies, including Kweku Kwating, Abna Oseasari, to continue the discussions. As he stepped out of the house, we grabbed him for a quick conversation, and he expressed the confidence that in that meeting he had convinced both his colleagues on the majority and the minority side to accept his request for a suspension of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, despite the threat from the minority leader Haruna Idrisu earlier that there should be a sanctioning directed towards him for the breach of that particular act. Hold it. I'm going to
have a position so much as the law. I mean, if you get a chance to read the law, I'm not sure that there's any basis for not doing that. I'm supposed to suspend and then come to them for approval. I think they are quite satisfied.
He wants to spend 1.1 billion on security. He wants to spend 1.5 billion on this Assembly's Common Fund. He wants to spend 1.3 billion on roads, agriculture, and so-called energy payments. And you tell us this is related to COVID. What has road construction got to do with COVID? What has agriculture support got to do with COVID? What has a shortfall in compensation got to do with COVID? And when we want details, we want enough information in order to protect the public purse, the majority decides that they will just railroad their way through. We will not be part of that.
So we will get into the details of what exactly will transpire next week. right here in Parliament, because as we all know, on Friday Parliament didn't sit because it's a public holiday. Well, there have been occasions when Parliament has actually sat on public holidays and all, including when they sat on Workers' Day, but this particular holiday is one of the days that they insisted that they would also take a break and enjoy the various Eid celebrations with their constituents and all. But the House approved a number of loan agreements and also financing agreements in the course of this particular week. Parliament, for example, approved a situation where about 200 million Ghana cedis, wasn't Ghana cedis by the way, it's actually 200 million US dollars, will be spent on what is called the Ghana Jobs and Skills Project to help develop the skills of young people and help provide them jobs and all. This is actually money that's coming from the International Development Association to help the nation deal with that particular issue having to do with job creation and all. That's not the only thing the House approved. The House also approved an amount of 115 million US dollars to finance what is called the e-transformation Ghana project, which is actually something that would help ensure that e-governance really becomes something that the nation will see, and that it would help provide the necessary platform for e-education and all, even in the light of issues having to do with COVID-19 and all. Although this is actually an arrangement that started well before COVID-19 became an issue, but that also got approved by the House in the course of the week. And additionally, the House approved a loan facility to the tune of about 90 million US dollars, also to finance the Nima Drains project right here in Ghana, which the indication from Parliament is that once that is done, it would help deal with the challenges having to do with flooding and all in Accra and other parts of the country. So we had all those approvals coming through in the course of the week right here in Parliament. But on Thursday, the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs and the Majority Leader, who is also described as the leader of government business right here in Parliament, delivered what is called the business statement to outline the issues that Parliament will be focusing attention on in the weeks ahead. This is usually done on Friday, but because of the House not sitting on Friday, it was actually delivered on Thursday.
The Business Committee has scheduled the following ministers to respond to questions asked of them during the week. The Minister of Communications, whose questions were initially programmed for this week, have been uploaded to next week. And she has 4 questions. The Minister of Energy has 7 questions. The Minister for Special Development Initiatives also has 1 question.
So this has been the show this week in Parliament, bringing you the major highlights of the various issues that dominated conversation right here in Parliament House in Accra, and also even as parliamentarians debated the various national issues. It's been a fairly short week. The week ended on Thursday because Friday has been a holiday. We say happy Eid to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. Thanks to them, we all enjoyed Friday as a day off without having to show up right here in Parliament. What we've additionally gleaned from the conversation here in Parliament is that on the 10th of August, the House will be going on its break, and so the week ahead will be the final week ahead of its recess, and they'll go on break for somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, we gather. But from observation, what has been happening is that in the final week before Parliament goes on break, all the various big documents are piled for them to approve. A lot more loan agreements get laid in the House, a lot more bills that have been in discussion ended up getting approved, and so the House ends up sitting sometimes very late into the night, sometimes 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and even midnight on some occasions. We wait to see how this week would look like. Well, no matter how late it gets, we will be here to bring you all the details and bring you the review of it when we bring you the show Parliament this week. My name is Joseph Opoku Gakpo. On this show, we review major developments in Parliament in the course of the week. Next week, same time, we'll bring you another edition of the show. But for now, we say have a very good day and have a very good weekend.